What is up, my ninjas? I am back like I left something. I figured I would start saying that after my homeboy Mr. Burton pointed that out to me. I listen to you, Jerizzle. I'm listening. Anyway, I am back with a movie review this time. After talking to my homeboy the Running Man, I decided I will do an Amazing Spider-Man review. And the funny thing is, I had, bits recorded for this review. Somehow I just never finished it. I think I got sidetracked or something. But anyway, this is a review for the Amazing Spider-Man movie that came out a few months back. It came out, I want to say, right before The Dark Knight Rises. And I ended up seeing it after The Dark Knight Rises, which was kind of weird. But I enjoyed this more than The Dark Knight Rises. For those of you who don't know, which I doubt there's really anybody who doesn't know about this film, it stars Andrew Garfield as the new Peter Parker, pretty much. The new modern Peter Parker, which was kind of weird because, the Raimi movies, even though visually it was modern times, they had kind of a, old school sensibility to them. It felt like that could have been, and it was pretty much the story from the 60s or 70s, and it was just, modernized in the visual style and, clothing, etc., etc. It was kind of modernized. Whereas the Amazing Spider-Man completely modernizes everything. It modernizes the setting. It looks like New York as it does now with no kind of, there were no embellishments or anything. New York is just New York, as flashy and busy as it really is. There were people don't act cartoony. They act pretty much just like, the average person would be acting. And Peter himself kind of gets, he benefits from this because then he doesn't 100% feel like a generic character. He feels like a kid that could have existed. I just didn't feel his style. He was kind of like straddling the fence between like emo and then like cocky pretty boy. You know what I'm saying? And like, Pete is not supposed to be a pretty boy. He's supposed to be outwardly awkward, and that's the only place where I had issues with Peter, because you liked this guy, and you're supposed to like Peter Parker, but there's supposed to be something about him that's supposed to take you a little bit of time to warm up to, and I guess they went about doing that in a different way. The director of this film was Mark Webb, who directed, I think it was 1,000 Days of Summer. I could be wrong. I don't remember exactly the title. I wasn't really familiar with Mark Webb's work before this movie anyway. So I also just read that recently that they signed up to have him do another, 500 Days of Summer. I don't know why I said 1,000 Days of Summer. 500 Days of Summer. They signed him up to do another Spider-Man film, which is cool. I dug what they did with this film. But let me get back to the film. Mark Webb did a good job making everything feel like it's real, in a sense. It's really happening in modern New York right now. It didn't feel like it took place, something about it took place 20 years beforehand, and now you're watching it in, modern colored glasses. The coolest things about this film were the fact that it, instead of starting with Pete's issues with Mary Jane and his life with Mary Jane, it started where Pete really started, with Gwen Stacy as his girlfriend. And no, this is not a spoiler, she does not die in this film. They wove a different kind of web, no pun intended, with the Gwen Stacy story. And the Green Goblin is not the villain. The villain is Rhys Ifans as the Lizard. And they took kind of a different approach with him as the villain, Normally the villain is straight up good or evil or a mix, or you're supposed to kind of hate him and kind of like him. In this case, they took the approach of you kind of sympathizing with him to some degree. The character is extremely confused. He is trying to create a serum of sorts, some type of medicine that would infuse the human body with properties of different animals that have abilities that help protect them or help them recover from injury. He's hoping to obviously use this to replace his lost arm. You kind of sympathize with the character. It's kind of nice to see a character who's not out and out evil, although he does kind of flip and go from being kind of mild mannered and kind of, quirky to just being straight out seemingly evil. But, as the plot progresses, you start seeing that it seems like the chemicals are screwing up his thought process. It's not that he is 100% batshit insane to begin with. Now, the big thing is that people were saying, and I felt this also, is that it was too early for a reboot. Too early to start over. And to start with the lizard kind of didn't feel as awesome as it could have been. But, to be fair, the lizard is an early villain of Spider-Man's. I mean, enemy or foe. He also, in the animated series in the 90s, that was the first... that was the first episode, was him fighting the lizard. So it was a good place to start. And as far as the reboot stuff goes, after seeing Spider-Man 3, I haven't sat down and watched it recently, but I remember how I felt when I saw it the last time. Spider-Man 3 was one of the films that I didn't even pay to see it. I was at a con of some sort. I can't remember which con it was. And, I was doing sketches at one of the premieres, and someone paid for their sketch with the ticket. Same as Superman Returns. And I went in and I watched it, and I was kind of annoyed. I was ready to leave, I'll admit that some of the fights, they were visually impressive in some scenes, especially the first fight between Pete and the Goblin. Like when he's in his full gear, when he was walking home with the ring, and the Goblin's in the full gear and snatched him up into the air, and he kept trying to catch the ring and all that shit. That was amazing. But the movies kind of lacked emotion. The fights, in that film lacked the emotional weight that the original and the second movie had. So I wasn't really blown away in any way, shape, or form by the third film. Also, it was just embarrassing. It was literally like watching someone that you're close to, someone that you know, make a fool of himself in public, and you can't stop them. So, after you've invested time, 2 movies, and they were good movies, now you have this bullshit, and you're kind of like, holy crap, like I have to actually sit here and watch them do this. And I wasn't really feeling that. So, it almost felt like, I guess they have to do something, because I'm pretty sure Raimi didn't want to come back and do any more Spider-Man films. I mean, after all the crap he went through with all the studio involvement, which is the reason why Spider-Man 3 was such a mess, is because there was too much studio involvement and not enough freedom for the team and the director to go crazy, And it's not like Raimi wasn't capable. But anyway, they decided to reboot it. We all had to deal with it because it happened. It's not like we really have a say in whether or not they do these things. You understand that big companies like to play it safe. Otherwise, the last 10 or 15 years wouldn't have been full of remakes, reboots, and the like, more Batman, more Superman, more Spider-Man. They stick with the safe stuff, more Iron Man. Once the first one made money, it didn't matter what the quality was of the next bunch. You were just going to get them because they make money. It's one of those kind of things, You see it with the toy lines, you see it with comics. You keep getting Wolverine, you keep getting Batman, you keep getting Superman, you keep getting, the popular characters, and then the other characters get shat on. So we were going to get more Spider-Man regardless. Overall, this film it was good. I won't say it was amazing, it wasn't great. It didn't really have the standout moments that the first 2 Raimi Spider-Man movies had. I mean, you could watch this back to back with the other one, and there were moments that you'd be like, huh. Like if you watched this as like a prequel to Spider-Man 2, kind of. Like watch Spider-Man 1 the Sam Raimi one, then watch this one, and then turn around and watch Spider-Man 2, you would see that, like, one had some standout moments. Like, that end fight in part one was crazy. Like, most of the times that the Goblin popped up, it was crazy. In part two, every single fight just was progressively better. And there were some jokes that were pretty funny and whatnot. And there were just scenes where you were like, damn, how is Pete going to get out of this? You know what I mean? Whereas in this one, because of the fact that the Lizard is not really 100% villain, you know, he's not trying to destroy the human race. He kind of it kind of lowered the stakes. It kind of made things feel less scary, you know. There were some genuinely scary moments, though. I'll give you that much. Like, there's a scene where towards the end, when Gwen Stacy is going to the lab to help Peter with the antigen, and the Lizard actually comes back to the lab while she's in there, and she's hiding. And there's this cool theme that plays for the Lizard. You know, if I can find it, I think I actually have the score somewhere. And the score wasn't really that amazing, but I think I have it, and I'll put it somewhere in here, or I'll just put it up by itself so you guys can hear it. But the music coupled with the situation kind of made you feel tense and whatnot, and then you see what was about to happen, and you're like, holy shit! Like, if I was in that situation, there would be a giant shit brick on the ground. You know what I mean? Like, my pants would be all kinds of messed up, because that's kind of a messed up situation to be in. But overall, like I said, the movie is pretty good. The direction is really, it's pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? It's competent direction. The fight scenes do not involve shaky cam, so you can actually see what's going on, although there's a lot of dark scenes in this movie. Lots of them. Lots of scenes where Pete's fighting and it's so dark, and then, you know, because he's fast, one minute he's here, and then by the time they're in a light spot, he's on the other side of the screen, and you kind of have issues seeing how he got there, until he puts on the suit. When he puts on the suit, then he's easier to track, because the suit is bright red and, you know, shades of blue. And there's little silver accents here and there and everything. The suit doesn't look bad either. The fight scenes actually were not horrible. They threw in parkour, and they had a lot of, like, real, you know, stunt work, as opposed to tons of CG. And there's CG in the movie, you can tell. But it's not as extensive as the Raimi movies were. But in their defense, the Raimi movies used it for the things that it just wouldn't make sense to have your actor try to pull these things off. You know, for those picture perfect moments, it's kind of hard to have a human being do these things in motion. It's much easier to animate and create that money shot that you want. So, you know, I give them that. And they did a combination of this in the new Spider-Man movie as well. And especially at the very end, and it's beautiful. It's nice to see. It's just, overall, the movie is just good. It's just okay. It doesn't really compare to the original ones. I don't think it's better than the first one. I know my homeboy said that he thought it was better than the first one, but not the second one. In my opinion, the thing that it gets right is it doesn't just jump to, like, Spider-Man is wearing his costume and here he is, he's a superhero. It doesn't do that. The other thing it does right is Peter feels like a full human being, and when he puts the mask on, you know, he's this, like, arrogant, kind of a prick. You know what I mean? He's annoying. And if you read Spider-Man comics, almost 95% of the other heroes that meet Spider-Man, they say he's annoying. From Wolverine all the way down, the only person who doesn't really seem to get annoyed with him is Captain America. And it's probably because Spider-Man doesn't do as much shit talking around Cap, because that's one of his idols. But he comes off as this kind of a douche. You would hate to fight him, and it's nice because the wisecracking is there. You know, this was, like, really strangely absent from the Sam Raimi films, as if he read those things and he read the books and didn't like that aspect of the character. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I don't know why it was absent, but it shouldn't have been. He should have been cracking real jokes. Even in the video games of the first two Spider-Man movies, he was cracking jokes, and I mean, he was really cracking jokes, and there were some classic Spider-Man quotes in there. Why were they not in the movie? You know, you'd think even after the first one didn't have much of it, that the second one would have had it, but it didn't really have it. So, I don't know. They had that here. They definitely had that here. And when Pete didn't have his mask on, he was kind of, he's somewhat awkward, somewhat quippy, but he wasn't really that much of a prick. He was really quiet. He was to himself. He seemed like a kid that you might have gone to school with. All of us have gone to school with that kind of kid. Shit, some of us could have been that kid, you know? Especially if you're an artist. Most of us artists, that's kind of the way we want it. We're loud and we're our full selves when we're surrounded by like-minded individuals. But when we're out there in public with the rest of the, you know, the mixed match or the poor cult, as you will, it just, I don't know, you keep to yourself. And that's kind of how he was. But then when he was around people that he was cool with and that he was relaxed and, you know, especially Gwen, you felt it. It was like, oh, okay. I mean, the romance. This was one thing I wanted to touch on, because the romance in the Raimi Spider-Man movies was kind of played the fuck out. It got old quick. And you could tell there wasn't really much chemistry between all those characters, or actors, I'm sorry, because, I mean, Kristen Dunst was like sleepwalking through all 3 films. And they didn't really give her character much to do. She always felt like, kind of like she was just in there to be someone for Spidey to save. Gwen in this, played by Emma Stone, Gwen Stacy in this movie was like the best female counterpart or lead to be with anybody playing Spider-Man next to the cartoons and in the comics. She had brains. She was beautiful. She actually did something. She held her own when sharing the screen with Spider-Man. It was nice. It was a definite improvement. So I just was pissed off that they chose her to play Gwen and not Mary Jane, because she is usually a redhead or a brunette. And it would have been awesome. I mean, you guys have seen, what was the movie? I think it was Zombieland. I'm pretty sure it was Zombieland. She was a redhead in that, and she was all quippy and shit, and it was like, you know, it made perfect sense. It was one of those things where you wanted to, I imagined that she would have been, you know, perfect for, you know, wow, I was going to say Lady J. Wow. You can tell where my mind is. You would have tell she would have been perfect for Mary Jane. So, I don't know. I'm pretty sure she's usually closer to being a redhead when in everything else I've seen her in. Yeah, she was in Zombieland. So I know I'm not that old and fucking shit up. But, like I said, she was an improvement. She was an awesome part of the movie. Uncle Ben and Aunt May. Martin Sheen and Sally Field. They played Uncle Ben and Aunt May. They were good. They were competent. I especially liked Sally Field as Aunt May because she wasn't like super old, but you know she's older. She looked like kind of a regular older woman who aged kind of well. She wasn't a MILF by any means, but she wasn't this old, like, crotchety old woman, you know? And I'm not saying that the original Aunt May was, you know, such a an old, you know, you know, she wasn't an old woman. It's just she didn't quite look, she doesn't look as old as the previous one. What was I going to say next? As far as Uncle Ben, when you see the way that stuff goes down, and he doesn't even say the whole big line, you know, which is awesome because I was wondering how they were going to handle that, and they don't actually like jump into that whole situation, you know. They kind of ignore that, and they give you the speech without using the exact line, so it doesn't get old to you. It's almost like Pete figures that part out for himself. And you know, when Uncle Ben meets his end, you're kind of like, shit, he met his end and it sucks. What was the other thing I was gonna say? Aunt May, you feel for her. You really feel for her. And it's not one of those things about, it's not one of those things where she's milking it. You know what I mean? She's one of the people, the characters in the show, in the movie, that you feel what she's going through because she starts losing her surrogate son, essentially. And then she loses her husband. Then she feels confused and lost because it's just her by herself. Whereas anything she asks Peter to do, he forgets and he just goes on about his business. And it's fucked up because that's kind of how this all started in the first place, you know, as Pete being irresponsible. So it's one of those things where they hit the right notes with those actors. And I mean, they're seasoned actors. They better hit those notes. You know what I'm saying? So overall, I was pretty, you know, I was happy with it. It was a good film. It wasn't boring. At the end, you felt good because the hero actually did what the hero needed to do. There is a scene leading up to the final confrontation that, even though there are levels of convenience, they set it up as such that you feel like this seems like what people who Spider-Man helped would do for him. And it's just really good. It's just really, really well done. And it gives you that feeling that I was talking about that was absent from The Dark Knight Rises. Instead of coming out of the theater feeling kind of like, shit, that was fucked up, you know? Like you felt in the last two Batman films, you feel like, wow, the hero actually did what he had to do. And it ends in the middle. It's not the greatest ending, and it's not the worst ending. It's actually a pretty good, you know, ending. The bad about the film, it's really simple, is that it's not much. There's action, but there's not a lot of action in comparison to the previous films. And it seemed like, I guess, because Mark Webb, the director, had never really handled a ton of action, at least not in film form, maybe in a music video or two, I don't know. But it seemed like he was afraid, or he didn't understand, or didn't know what to do with Spider-Man. It's like they tried really hard to establish their own version of the character, how he does everything. I dug how he fought, but it just seemed kind of like, let's throw in a cool move here, and then, like, you know, bullshit slaps and throws. You know what I'm saying? Like, there were cool scenes where he did things that you're like, oh, that makes sense. But, you know, this is a kid living in today's world. We watch UFC. He probably grew up with Jet Li and Jackie Chan films. He probably grew up with other superheroes. I mean, he lives in the Marvel Universe. The fighting was kind of like, you don't get to see those awesome Spider-Sense moments that were in the first two Sam Raimi films. They did it differently. I mean, you get the idea that it's Spider-Sense, but instead of slowing down time to kind of show you how fast Spider-Man moves, it just was like a sound and an effect, and that was really it. So you get the idea it was heightened awareness, and then that's it. So I kind of want more crazy action, you know? And it still boggles my mind how after The Matrix, all action films started copying The Matrix's format and style. You know what I mean? Like the enhanced visuals to give you the idea behind superpowers, essentially, you know? But then all the superhero films that came out, and the only one that used anything close to it was Daredevil, to show you his powers. But everyone else didn't take advantage of the camera. Well, the first Spider-Man, I guess, the first two, I guess you can say they did the slow down time thing where you get to kind of see clearly what's going on. So, Spider-Man and Daredevil. But all the others they haven't done it. And I want to see them take effects from The Matrix, that style, enhance upon those things, and give us the action that we've been asking for. Make the camera go crazy with Spider-Man's movements. There's no excuse for why, with a character like Spider-Man who has super agility, you know, like enhanced meta-human agility, why is he not Cirque du Soleil this shit up when he's in the air? You know what I mean? Flipping through gunfire like it's nothing, you know? They did a good job showing him dodge things, and, you know, you feel like he is Spider-Man, don't get me wrong, but he's such a basic level Spidey. Because even on even if you read the first issues, the early issues of Spider-Man, when he's learning about his powers and stuff, he pretty early on does some really crazy things, some amazing things. Whereas in this one, it's everything in a nutshell is amazing, but the level of that skill or amazement, you know, the level of what he does is still kind of tame in this in comparison to the first stuff that he was doing in the other Spider-Man films. So I don't know. If you don't compare it to the other Spider-Man films, it's it's just a competent film. It's not amazing, which sucks because it's called The Amazing Spider-Man. Does he feel like he would be able to fit in with the Avengers? Yeah, actually, Spider-Man himself could. I don't know about the rest of the characters, which they wouldn't be in the Avengers. I mean, they'd be, you know, probably side characters, obviously. But the rest of the world feels kind of real. And it doesn't even feel like they turn on the TV and see the Avengers doing shit. You know what I'm saying? Whereas the Avengers, though, feels like the kind of world that a corner of it could be Spider-Man's universe. And it would be fine, you know? You could go to Forest Hills. Tony Stark could walk through Forest Hills and people would be like, oh shit, it's Tony Stark, you know? I know it's two different, you know, movie companies. I'm just saying that as Marvel films have become connected, and Spider-Man is probably the last next to X-Men that does not belong to Marvel anymore in the film form, it still has the kind of feel that the other films, the Avengers separate films and the Avengers had. It's 100 times better than any of the X-Men films, in my opinion. I hate those movies through and through. I thought it was a funny idea to do The Last Stand the way they did because it wrapped up all the loose ends, but I hate the X-Men films. They missed the point for me, and I've been reading X-Men for most of my life. I had to stop. After the films came out, those books went to shit, in my opinion, and people who've only been reading since then, they love it. But people who've been reading from the beginning, I've had mixed, you know, kind of arguments, you know, go back and forth. Some people dig it, some people don't. A lot of people don't, you know, but there's a lot of younger people who are coming up now that are just reading comics and they think it's cool. So, you know, it's selling. So, in my opinion, this kicks the shit out of those films. This kicked the shit out of The Dark Knight Rises, in my opinion. And a lot of people are going to give me shit for that, but I'm just being honest. It was more interesting. More, I don't know. It was more of the movie, the kind of entertainment that you go to the theater for. You go, you turn your brain off for a little while, and you watch. There are tons of holes, obviously. Or I shouldn't even say holes, but just conveniences. But lately, in these kind of movies, the writers seem to hinge their success on writing something that's just accessible, especially with Marvel films. It's just accessible. Everyone gets it. And then they don't move past that, you know? You get it. You understand what kind of character he is. It's just enough to give you the idea, and then they don't really challenge you any more past that. Iron Man didn't. Iron Man 2 damn sure didn't. Avengers didn't. None of the Spider-Man movies did. None of the X-Men movies really did. Actually, I shouldn't even count them because they're not technically, they're not Marvel Studios films. But Captain America didn't. Thor really was the one in between. It kind of had it, but it was very, you know, like I said, it didn't really make you work that hard for anything. Shit, The Dark Knight didn't really make you work that hard. You go and watch The Prestige and then turn around and watch The Dark Knight and you'll see what I'm talking about. Same director, it seemed like because one was all him, it made sense. And there were no holes, whereas the other one's full of fucking holes. All three movies are full of holes, but the third one is the worst. So anyway, check it out if you want to. I'm sorry this was so long. I kind of rambled on about several different things, but some of my homies, some of my ninjas out there, you guys actually, you've told me you like the long videos. So I figure I will ramble on. So anyway, stay tuned. I'm working on the music and fighting games Then and Now. What is it, 2? It's almost done. All right, I'm out. Peace.